tornado formed amidst a week-long period of elevated tornadic activity in an area expected to be strongly conducive for the development of long-tracked and fast-moving tornadoes. Over the next 48 minutes, the tornado was observed by multiple storm chasers and research teams, who would determine the extreme wind figure from a direct radar measurement above the city of Greenfield. In addition to one fatality on a highway in Adams County, 4 fatalities occurred in Greenfield, with the damage in the city described as horrific, as surveyors revealed damage consistent with a violent EF4 tornado, contradicting analysis of mobile radar data. The tornado has been noted as an important milestone in the practical efficacy of the WARN-ON forecast system, which predicted tornadic activity in the vicinity of Greenfield about 75 minutes before the tornado reached the community. State legislation introduced in the aftermath of the Greenfield and Minden tornadoes passed that summer and the following year would fund housing projects and disaster recovery programs throughout Iowa. Meteorological synopsis. Convective outlook outlining a moderate risk over the north-central United States. Storm Prediction Center, S-Day 1 Convective Outlook for May 21, 2024, issued at 1300 Z, indicating a moderate risk for severe weather over much of Iowa and nearby parts of Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, and southeastern Minnesota. May 21st, forecasters at the Storm Prediction Center issued a moderate, 4/5 risk for severe weather over the states of Iowa, Missouri, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois, highlighting an elevated regional risk for tornadoes and strong wind gusts. 5. Early on that morning, convective storms along a bow echo, a formation of storms associated with high winds, had formed along a boundary consisting of outflow from storm activity over western Nebraska. These storms were expected to move eastward through the southern third of Iowa, bringing a small risk of surface-based severe weather. To the north, a roughly west to east band of non-severe storms existed along a composite frontal and outflow boundary. North of this boundary existed a large area of rain showers that covered an area of dew points near 60 Fahrenheit and surface temperature in the lower 60s Fahrenheit. 6. Dew points above 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 degrees Celsius, are typically considered more conducive to severe weather. 7. These showers led to atmospheric stabilization, curtailing any severe risk north of the boundary. As the convection moved eastward out of the area, its severe risk was expected to lessen. 6. Later on that morning, a second severe weather threat developed as a large surface low-pressure trough had appeared over the Midwest, primarily centered over north-central Kansas, with a secondary and weaker low center near the tri-point of South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota. A warm front extended from the southern low center to the northeast through southeastern Nebraska and over southern Iowa, creating a large warm sector. A cold front anchored by the same low center extended southeast through central Kansas into the Oklahoma Panhandle. The primary surface low was expected to move quickly to the northeast, moving the warm sector bounded by the warm front further north into east central to southeastern Nebraska and west central to southwestern Iowa, where atmospheric conditions conducive to severe weather would develop. Strong vertical ascent brought by the shortwave trough led to probable elevated thunderstorms over the central Nebraska-Kansas border, which would contribute to a surface-based storm system as they approached the Nebraska-Iowa border region. These surface-based storms were expected to develop into fast-moving supercells capable of producing severe weather hazards. 8. Early in the afternoon, the southern low center had moved to southeastern Nebraska. The warm front was expected to rapidly move northward ahead of the shortwave trough, which would bring higher dew points in the upper 60s Fahrenheit into much of Iowa. In conjunction with this, a large change in temperatures with altitude hallmarked by steep mid-level lapse rates, and mid-level CAPE values of 2500-3500 J per kilogram, a measure of atmospheric instability approximating the power thunderstorm updrafts have to rise. 9. In addition to powerful wind fields producing elongated hodographs, a measure indicative of a shift in wind speed with height that allows the development of rotating thunderstorms. 10. Were expected to be present in the region throughout the early afternoon. These factors would result in an environment very conducive to significant and fast-moving severe thunderstorms. The storm mode was initially expected to be discrete, with fast-moving individual storms staying ahead of the cold front in the severe conducive warm sector. These storms were expected to quickly develop the characteristics of severe supercell thunderstorms, with strong wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour, 121 kilometers per hour, very large hail up to 3 in 7.6 centimeters, and strong and long-lasting tornadoes all being possible hazards. 11. Particularly dangerous situation level of tornado watch was issued at 1:10 p.m. Central Daylight Saving Time over much of Iowa and parts of surrounding states. All severe weather hazards were expected as the risk of several tornadoes and a few intense tornadoes would exist over a large region, including Adair County. The watch outlined a 90% chance of 2 or more tornadoes, with an 80% chance of 1 or more tornadoes significant on the enhanced Fujita scale, EF2 EF5, in the watch area. 12. Tornado summary. Formation through Adams County. A collapsed wind turbine over open country, bent sharply below its midpoint. Toppled wind turbine that had previously caught fire. Tornado first touched down at the intersection of 110th Street and Vine Avenue in rural Page County, Iowa at 2:57 p.m. Central Daylight Time, UTC-5. Across Page County, damage up to EF1 intensity occurred, restricted primarily to tree branches, while the roof of a farm outbuilding was torn off. 2. It then briefly tracked through the far northwestern tip of Taylor County, causing no damage. 2. Before moving into Adams County, where damage occurred to trees, power poles and farm buildings past the county border. The tornado intensified as it passed through rural areas to the southeast of Nottoway, before crossing US 34 north of Brooks, where numerous videos displayed the tornado's large funnel with an area of swirling debris below. 2. The tornado then crossed Iowa 148, where 41-year-old Monica Irma Zamaran was killed after she was ejected from her vehicle after being caught in the tornado's circulation. 13. The tornado began producing more EF2 damage past this point, before producing EF3 damage at the intersection of 150th Street and Notchwood Avenue, where an unanchored home lost its walls and slid off its foundation, while all nearby outbuildings were destroyed. 2. Throughout the rest of Adams County, the tornado caused damage to multiple wind turbines, many of which collapsed, while reaching a maximum width in the county of 1,300 yards, 1,200 meters, and exhibiting multiple suction vortices each producing damage. Adair County. Tornado then crossed into Adair County, still with multiple vortex characteristics. 2. While downing a wind turbine, 14, and a metal truss tower. 1-5. The tornado then approached Fontanelle Road, where it destroyed a well-anchored home at EF4 intensity with the debris thrown into a nearby field. 2. An outbuilding on the property was completely obliterated, although the farm equipment was mostly unmoved and not severely damaged, and trees were shredded. Northeast of there on 310th Street, a nailed-down cinderblock foundation home and an outbuilding were obliterated and swept away. Vehicles inside the garage of the home were damaged, but not tossed, while debris from the structures and vehicles within it were left straddling along the sides of the foundation. The tornado then moved back over open terrain, inflicting damage to an outbuilding, which was rated EF1, before downing more wind turbines. Low-end EF4 damage was observed as the tornado crossed 290th Street, where another home was leveled. 1-6. Crossing Jordan Avenue, the violent tornado leveled another home, while overturning a vehicle, and throwing another into a tree line. A nearby home was also mostly destroyed at EF3 intensity, and more trees were snapped, with several experiencing partial debarking. The tornado then moved through another wind farm, collapsing additional wind turbines. As the tornado approached Greenfield from the southwest, it tossed vehicles at EF2 intensity and destroyed 2 homes at EF3 intensity, with EF1 damage to roofs and outbuildings also occurring. Right before entering Greenfield, the tornado passed over Nottoway Park Ponds where 2 outbuildings were destroyed, and another home suffered roof damage at EF2 intensity. Greenfield and dissipation. Aerial view of multiple destroyed structures. Aerial imagery of EF4 damage to houses in northeastern Greenfield, Iowa. Peak wind speeds were estimated at 170 miles per hour, 270 kilometers per hour, here. Tornado then entered the southwest part of Greenfield, and began producing EF4 scale damage again, reaching its peak intensity of mid-range EF4 shortly after it entered the town. Dozens of homes were leveled, with some homes being partially swept away, and mobile homes and outbuildings were obliterated. The most intense damage occurred when a well-built home was obliterated and swept away. The estimated wind speed at this location was 185 miles per hour, 298 kilometers per hour. 17. Many other homes suffered extensive roof and exterior wall damage, and many large trees were snapped and stubbed, including some that landed on and contributed to houses being leveled. The tornado then produced high-end EF3 damage to the southeast side of town, continuing to heavily damage homes, including some that were leveled or shifted off their foundations, and obliterating mobile homes, as well as snapping large trees. The tornado then produced low-end EF4 damage on the eastern side of town near the intersection of Iowa 92 and Iowa 25. More homes were leveled, shifted off their foundations, or suffered severe roof and exterior wall damage. It also heavily damaged or destroyed more outbuildings and stubbed additional trees. All throughout the town, vehicles were destroyed and wooden power poles were snapped as well. 1618, 4 elderly people were killed and 35 other people were injured in the town. 19-4-18. The Adair County Hospital suffered significant damage, with lab and testing equipment being destroyed and hallways flooded. Catherine Hillstad, CEO of the hospital, stated that, had the tornado been any closer to our hospital or hit us directly, this entire building would be gone, referring to the fact that the hospital was very close to some of the tornado's most intense damage. 20. Beyond that point, the tornado weakened as it continued northeastward before dissipating at 3:45 p.m. Central Daylight Time, UTC-5. The tornado was rated EF4 on the enhanced Fujita scale, with wind speeds estimated at 185 miles per hour, 298 kilometers per hour, reaching a peak width of 1,300 yards, 1,200 meters, along a 42.38-mile, 68.20 kilometers, path, remaining on the ground for 48 minutes. 5 fatalities occurred overall, along with 35 injuries. 2. Another EF2 tornado formed from the same storm that produced the Greenfield tornado as it was dissipating, which tracked an additional 11.87 miles, 19.10 kilometers, through northeastern Adair County. 2-1. Observation and research. Storm chasers and DOW observation. DOW radar image of the tornado. DOW7 imagery of the tornado's ground-adjusted wind speeds at 3:41, 8 p.m. at peak intensity. Storm chaser and meteorologist Reed Timmer captured close-range drone footage of the tornado destroying multiple wind turbines over rural Iowa. 22. While he attempted to chase and intercept tornadoes in Iowa that day in the SRV Dominator, it encountered a mechanical issue while driving in Kansas, and Timmer's team used a rental car to follow the tornado. In a review of footage from the remotely operated drone, Timmer stated that pressure readings inside of the tornado were likely over 100 MB, 100 hectopascals, below its surroundings. that subvortices of the tornado may have orbited the parent circulation at speeds close to 200 miles per hour, 320 kilometers per hour, and could have destroyed the SRV Dominator if it was used to intercept the storm, and that wind speeds inside of these subvortices could even reach about 400 miles per hour, 640 kilometers per hour, or even approach the speed of sound, though these figures were not directly recorded. 23. Engineer and meteorologist Timothy P. Marshall stated while analyzing footage of the storm-destroying wind turbines that the way in which the storm destroyed the turbines' blades could be used as reference for a future damage indicator for the enhanced Fujita scale. 24. Chicago and Midwest storm chasers released a video of an aerial drone survey of Greenfield shortly after the tornado struck. 25. Research team headed by Joshua Werman and Karen Kosiba of the Flexible Array of Radars and Mesonet's research team observed the Greenfield tornado with a myriad of observational instruments. While one crew went to deploy a pod of observational instruments in the direct path of the tornado for data collection, another, operating with a Doppler on wheels, Dow portable radar unit arrived in Greenfield at 3:30 p.m. and stationed themselves roughly 300 yards, 270 meters, away from the ultimate path of the tornado around 1 mile east of the center of the community. As the tornado struck Greenfield, the Dow unit experienced wind gusts of 80 miles per hour, 130 kilometers per hour, at their point of observation, 26, while a weaker tornado formed directly overhead the Dow vehicle operated by Kosiba. 27. The main tornado narrowed in width on approach to Greenfield, 26, being described as unusually small, as it tracked through the town, and a very brief wind gust of 263 to 271 miles per hour, 423 to 436 kilometers per hour, was briefly measured at a height of 44 meters, 144 feet, which translated to an instantaneous gust of 309 to 318 miles per hour, 497 to 512 kilometers per hour, when adjusted to a ground level estimation. This extreme figure likely was experienced for less than a second, 1:27, and has been described as one of the highest wind speed figures on Earth. 28. This was one of only 3 observations of wind speeds exceeding 300 miles per hour, 480 kilometers per hour, inside of a tornado, alongside the 1999 Bridge Creek Moore tornado and the 2013 El Reno tornado. 29. Peter Gronemeyer, the director of the European Severe Storms Laboratory, stated in reference to the Greenfield tornado's initial Dow measurement that O/N scale, 250 miles per hour measured below 60 meters above ground level is IF4 on the F scale, 290 miles per hour is IF5. 30. Damage analysis. See also, EF5 drought and disagreements on the intensity of tornadoes. A bare structural foundation with the words "off meter" spray painted on the side. Highest rated damage in Greenfield was to an engineered or well-constructed home on SE 2nd Street, which was swept cleanly off its foundation. Most intense damage produced by the tornado was surveyed around 12:17 p.m. on May 22 by the National Weather Service office in Des Moines, Iowa, which was an engineered or well-constructed residence that was destroyed with its slab swept clean. The damage was consistent with a peak wind speed of 185 miles per hour, 298 kilometers per hour. 17. After the Flexible Array of Radars and Mesonet's team released their extreme wind estimate, which disagreed with their survey, WHO Des Moines reached out to various individuals for comment about the enhanced Fujita scale and damage in Greenfield. 31. Bill Gallus, a professor of meteorology at Iowa State University, stated that wind measurements are collected on very few tornadoes and are therefore too inconsistently taken to be included in the final rating. Chad Hahn, a warning coordination meteorologist at National Weather Service Des Moines, stated that the damage in Greenfield did not support a rating consistent with the wind estimate, but did believe such a wind gust was possible. Jimmy Schultz, the mayor of Greenfield, stated that the wind estimate and damage surveys ignored the reality that many suffered incredible personal loss due to the tornado. 31. No matter what wind speed, all that other stuff. It was a vicious tornado that come through here, and a lot people, sick, lost everything. You know, I mean, a few lost their lives, but most of them lost everything. 31. In a presentation discussing the findings during the Greenfield event by Werman and Kosiba, the disconnect between wind speed and ground damage was discussed, with one suggestion stating that aerial wind speeds could be disrupted by housing and other structures at ground level that could have prevented them from producing damage, in addition to the tornado's fast forward speed of 45 miles per hour, 72 kilometers per hour, that caused the tornado to spend less than 1 minute in Greenfield. 3-2. Warn-on forecast. The National Severe Storms Laboratory used the Warn-on forecast system, an experimental forecasting tool using models and machine learning to predict individual storms, predicted a high probability of extremely strong surface level rotation in the vicinity of Greenfield over a full hour before the tornado began. This information was shared with National Weather Service forecasters across Iowa to assist in their warning issuing operations. Forecasters had been discussing the implications of the Warn-on forecast output internally around 75 minutes before the tornado struck Greenfield. Increasing meteorological lead times before the onset of severe conditions is the goal of the program, which aims to reduce losses of life and economic damages from severe weather events. 3-3. Aftermath. Scar is visible through the southeastern side of Greenfield. Sentinel-2 satellite imagery of Greenfield with a clear damage scar highlighted. Annotated map of Greenfield. Map of Greenfield overlaid with peak DOW7 velocity data, the location of DOW8 and the team's in situ instruments, and peak surveyed damage. The hours following the tornado, emergency personnel as well as storm chasers rushed into Greenfield to provide aid. Surrounding communities such as Red Oak quickly responded in Greenfield, with aid also coming from communities on the borders of Nebraska and Missouri. 34. The local St. John's Catholic Church parking lot was set up as a center for volunteers. 34. In a press conference later that day, Iowa State Patrol held a press conference in Adair County, which also included the announcements of a one-day curfew in Greenfield and the establishment of security checkpoints to get into town, with only residents being allowed to enter in the immediate aftermath. 35. Volunteers from the Y'all Squad, a nonprofit established by YouTube weather presenter Ryan Hall, Y'all, entered Greenfield to assist immediate recovery efforts hours after the tornado. Hall's audience also raised $93,000 in recovery funds in the hours after the storm. 3-6. Tornado's damage scar through Greenfield was visible on satellite imagery. 37. Due to a timely response, 50% of the town's electric service was restored by the morning of May 24.